Can you imagine a lake that turns animals into stone? A place that looks stunning but is actually deadly? Or a 70-foot deep crater in the ground where a fire has been burning for 50 years? Let's explore 5 of the world's most dangerous and unique places.
Lake Natron sits in northern Tanzania, near the border with Kenya, in the East African Rift Valley. It's a shallow lake, rarely more than 3 meters deep, fed primarily by the Iwaso-Niro River and by hot springs bubbling up from the volcanic earth below. When photographer Nick Brandt visited this lake in 2013, it left him so unsettled he had to photograph what he found. Calcified birds and bats, frozen mid-motion on the shoreline, posed like eerie sculptures from another world. So, what is Lake Natron? Why does it turn animals to stone? And how on earth do flamingos thrive in it?
The water at Lake Natron is saturated with sodium carbonate, also called natron, along with other minerals leaching out of the surrounding volcanic rock. This makes the lake almost incomprehensibly alkaline. We're talking a pH level between 9 and 10.5. To put that in perspective, bleach sits around a 12. Battery acid is a 1. Lake Natron is not far from the bleach end of that scale. The temperature doesn't help either. Near those hydrothermal springs, the water can reach up to 60 degrees Celsius. That's 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to scald. The lake also turns a deep, vivid red. Not from blood, but from salt-loving microorganisms called haloarchaea that thrive in the brine and produce a reddish pigment. From above, it looks like a wound in the earth. And in a way, it is.
Now, the stone animals. When Nick Brandt published his photographs in 2013, the internet lost its mind. Birds, bats, a fish eagle, all frozen, all encased in white mineral crust, all perfectly preserved in their final postures, wings outstretched, claws curled, heads tilted skyward. So what happened to them? The sodium carbonate in Lake Natron acts as a natural preservative, essentially the same compound ancient Egyptians used to mummify their dead. When animals die in or near the lake and their bodies wash to the shoreline, the minerals in the water begin to coat them. The calcification process hardens around the body, preserving feathers, scales, skin, even the most delicate details, in an almost perfect cast.
Some animals are likely disoriented by the lake's reflective surface, mistaking it for clear sky and flying directly into it. Others may simply misjudge their landing. A few sips of that alkaline water would be enough to cause catastrophic internal damage to most creatures. The resulting statues are hauntingly beautiful. Brandt said he found them washed up on the shoreline and simply posed them back into natural positions for the photographs, returning a kind of dignity to animals that had died in confusion.
Here's where it gets genuinely wild. Lake Natron is the primary, and in some years the only breeding ground for the lesser flamingo in the world. Up to 2.5 million of them nest here. That is roughly 75% of the entire global population of the species. In a lake that dissolves most living things, in temperatures that would boil a human hand. How? Because flamingos evolved specifically to exploit this extreme environment. Their thick, scaly skin resists the caustic water. Their legs and feet are coated in a protective layer that lets them wade through brine that would strip the flesh from most animals. They can even drink the boiling water from the hydrothermal springs. Glands in their beaks filter and desalinate it before it reaches their stomachs.
And the hostile environment is exactly the point. Lake Natron is so lethal that almost no predator can follow them in. No lions, no hyenas, no crocodiles. The flamingos nest on small islands of salt that form in the middle of the lake. Islands surrounded by a moat of chemical death. It's the perfect fortress. They even feed on those red haloarchaea, the microorganisms that make the lake look like Mars. The pigments from those organisms are part of what gives flamingos their famous pink color. There is a place on Earth where the ground bleeds yellow and green, where the air itself can kill you in minutes, where temperatures regularly cross 122 degrees Fahrenheit, and the rock beneath your feet is thinner than the skin on your hand, because directly below it, the Earth is tearing itself apart. Tucked into the northeastern corner of Ethiopia, near the borders of Eritrea and Djibouti, the Danakil Depression sits over 100 meters below sea level, one of the lowest, hottest, and most volcanically violent places on the entire planet. Scientists don't call it hostile, they call it Mars on Earth. NASA has actually sent researchers here to study it, because the extremophile bacteria surviving in its acid pools are the closest thing we have to understanding how life might exist on other worlds. The average daily temperature? Around 94 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's the average, factoring in the relatively cooler nights. In peak season, it can soar past 120. This is the hottest inhabited place on Earth, year-round. The reason Danakil feels alien is because geologically, it's brand new. 3 tectonic plates meet here, the African, Arabian, and Somali plates, slowly pulling apart at the seams. In a few million years, scientists believe this entire region will flood and become a new ocean. Right now, though, it's simply pulling itself apart, inch by inch, year by year. That tension has to go somewhere, and it goes here, to Erta Ale, one of only a handful of permanent lava lakes on Earth, a churning, glowing wound in the planet's crust, visible for miles at night, hissing and popping as molten rock rises and falls like a slow, furious heartbeat. Trekkers who make the brutal overnight hike to its rim describe standing at the edge and feeling the heat hit their face like an open oven door, while staring directly into the Earth's molten interior.
If Erta Air is Danakil's heart, Dalol is its poison. This hydrothermal field looks like a painter's fever dream. Neon yellows from sulfur, acid greens from copper salts, blood orange pools of near-boiling brine. It's beautiful. It's also one of the most corrosive environments on the planet. The pools here can reach a pH close to 0, strong enough to dissolve metal. The air carries chlorine and sulfur gas. Guides warn visitors never to step off the marked paths because the crust can be paper thin, hiding pockets of scalding acid just beneath the surface. And yet, microbial life thrives here. Some of the most ancient organisms on Earth call these pools home. Creatures that need no oxygen, no sunlight, nothing we'd recognize as hospitable. Just heat, acid, and time. Despite everything working against human life here, Danakil is not empty. The Afar people have lived in this region for centuries, and one of their most vital trades happens right on the surface of the depression itself: salt mining. Beneath the cracked white flats lies an enormous ancient sea, evaporated over millennia into a shimmering salt desert. Every day, Afar workers walk out into the heat with nothing but hand axes, cutting slabs of salt from the ground exactly the way their ancestors did. No machines, no shade, temperatures well past 100 degrees. The salt is loaded onto camel and donkey caravans and walked for days across the desert to market towns. It's one of the harshest jobs on Earth, sustained by one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. Somewhere in the middle of a desert, in one of the most closed-off countries on Earth, there was a hole in the ground that has been on fire since before most of us were born. Locals call it the door to hell. Scientists call it the Darvaza gas crater. And for over half a century, it has burned around the clock, through wars, revolutions, the fall of the Soviet Union, and the entire internet age. Let's rewind to 1971. The Soviet Union is deep into a resource race, and Turkmenistan, then a Soviet republic sitting on some of the richest natural gas reserves on the planet, is a prime target for drilling. A team of geologists sets up in the Karakum Desert,
right over what they believe is a promising gas field. They start drilling, but the ground beneath their rig is hollow, a massive underground gas cavern, and the moment they broke through, the earth gives way. The drilling rig and a chunk of the desert floor with it collapses into a crater roughly 70 meters wide and 30 meters deep. Picture something big enough to swallow 3 US Capitol buildings.
That's bad enough on its own. But now there's a much bigger problem. The crater is leaking methane. Poisonous, invisible, and drifting straight toward nearby villages. So the geologists make a call that will define this place for the next 50 years. They light it on fire. The logic was simple. Burn off the gas, let it run out in a few days or weeks, and the danger disappears. Nobody wrote it down properly. There's no official record, no drilling report, not even solid confirmation of the exact year. What we do know is that the fire started, and it never stopped. Here's why a few weeks turned into 50+ years. The Darvaza crater doesn't sit on one simple gas pocket. It sits on top of a tangled network of interconnected gas layers, stacked between roughly 200 and 950 meters underground. Gas migrates between them. Seal one leak, and pressure just finds another way out. It's less like blowing out a candle and more like trying to plug a sponge. At its peak, this thing was genuinely apocalyptic. Flames reaching 15 meters into the air. Temperatures inside topping 1,000 degrees Celsius, hotter than the surface of Venus. On a clear night, the orange glow was visible for miles across the desert, a beacon in a country most of the world never gets to see. And people did come to see it. Despite Turkmenistan being one of the hardest countries on Earth to get a visa for, tourists made the multi-hour drive from the capital, Ashgabat, just to camp in yurts beside a literal doorway to hell. In 2013, explorer George Koronis became the first person to actually climb down into the crater in a heat-resistant suit with his own oxygen supply to collect soil samples from ground hot enough to blister skin instantly. Scientists later found heat-loving bacteria living in that soil, life thriving at the gates of hell.
What if I told you there's a place on Earth that looks like it belongs on another planet? A place with trees that bleed red, where flowers grow out of solid rock, and 1 out of every 3 plant species exists nowhere else on the planet. Welcome to Socotra, and by the time this video ends, you'll understand why scientists call it the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean. Socotra is a small archipelago belonging to Yemen, floating in the Arabian Sea about 240 kilometers off the coast of the Horn of Africa. It's remote, isolated, and for millions of years, it's been almost completely cut off from the rest of the world. That isolation is exactly why it looks the way it does.
The most famous resident is the dragon's blood tree. Picture an umbrella turned inside out, its branches fanning upward in a dense, tangled crown. When you cut into its bark, it doesn't bleed sap, it bleeds a deep crimson red resin. For centuries, locals and traders believed this resin held medicinal and even magical properties. It was used as dye, as varnish, and in ancient times, some believed it was literally the blood of dragons. But the strangeness doesn't stop there. There's the desert rose, a bulbous, swollen-trunked tree that looks like it's storing water for a drought that never ends. Because on Socotra, it usually is one. There's cucumber trees, bottle trees, and succulents shaped like nothing you've seen in a garden center. The landscape genuinely feels curated by an alien botanist. Despite this otherworldly appearance, people have lived here for thousands of years. The Socotri people speak their own unlisted language, herd goats along the cliffs, and have passed down oral traditions about these strange plants for generations, long before Western scientists ever arrived to study them. In 1986, construction workers in Romania were scouting a site for a new power plant. They drilled down to test the ground and stumbled onto something that shouldn't exist: a cave, sealed off from the surface world for over 5 million years, filled with toxic air
and creatures found absolutely nowhere else on Earth. This is Movile Cave, and it's one of the strangest ecosystems ever discovered. Movile Cave sits near the Black Sea coast in Romania, but don't picture a cave you can casually stroll into. It's a vertical shaft, dropping around 20 meters down, leading to a labyrinth of narrow passages filled with warm, humid air and dangerously high levels of hydrogen sulfide and low oxygen. The kind of environment that would kill most animals, including us, if we breathed it for too long without protection.
Here's what makes it truly extraordinary. Geologists believe this cave has been completely sealed off from the outside world for roughly 5.5 million years. No sunlight has ever touched its depths, no connection to the surface ecosystem, and yet it's teeming with life. Over 30 species have been discovered inside, and nearly all of them exist nowhere else on the planet. There are blind spiders, earless leeches, and a species of woodlouse that has evolved completely without pigment or sight.
So how does anything survive down there? Cut off from sunlight, cut off from plants, cut off from the entire food chain we rely on at the surface? The answer is chemosynthesis. Instead of photosynthesis, which uses sunlight, bacteria in Movile Cave convert hydrogen sulfide and methane into energy. These bacteria form floating mats on the water's surface, and they become the foundation of an entire food web. Insects eat the bacteria, other creatures eat the insects, and an entire ecosystem sustains itself without a single ray of sunlight. Scientists consider Movile Cave one of the best natural analogs we have for studying how life might exist on other worlds.